and being crippled. This product cleans you out while you sleep with gentle oxygen. It has none of the nasty side effects associated with harsh herbal colon cleansers. It's the only colon cleansing product with ingredients backed by real clinical studies on safety. And we've just got a new shipment in on Oxy powder at InfoWarsStore.com. And again, we go back to the fact that health is one of the key areas where you can reclaim personal responsibility and freedom. You know, people are always asking us for solutions, and that is one area of your life which you can directly regain control over. And that's what it's all about. If you can regain control over these certain aspects of your life, you can empower yourself to make better decisions about your life. And obviously, in terms of health, this is going to help you all around the board. That's Oxy powder. Also, DNA Force up on InfoWarsStore.com contains patented ingredients based on Nobel Prize science and backed again by real clinical research. And this DNA Force has more potent antioxidant activity than vitamin C. Help energize your cellular powerhouse, mitochondrial function, and sustain healthy cell cycles. InfoWars Life Formula line, again, another powerful product from their DNA Force. I've been taking some of this stuff to help me get over the flu over the past week or so, and it's really helped. That's Oxy powder and DNA Force at InfoWarsStore.com. Reclaim power over your health. Personal responsibility, again, is the key. And, of course, it supports the broadcast and everything we do here at Infowars.com. So that's InfoWarsStore.com for the Oxy powder, DNA Force, and all the other health products. Breaking news now out of NBCnews.com. Ebola patient Thomas Eric Duncan's nephew, I had to call CDC. The first person diagnosed with Ebola in the US wasn't appropriately treated for suspected infection until after a relative personally called the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, his nephew told NBC News on Wednesday night. Health officials have acknowledged that Thomas Eric Duncan, 42, was initially sent home from Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas when he showed up on September 26, complaining of fever and abdominal pain. He had to return 2 days later in an ambulance. This is what the nephew says. That was the day, quote, I called CDC to get some actions taken because I was concerned for his life and he wasn't getting the appropriate care. Duncan's nephew, Josephus Weeks, told NBC News on Wednesday night. So again, we know before this guy, Thomas Eric Duncan, arrived in Dallas, he had helped an Ebola victim, a pregnant woman who subsequently died from the Ebola virus, into a taxi to get her to the hospital. He then contracted Ebola, flew to the United States via, I think it was Brussels and Washington Dulles, walks into a Dallas hospital, and again, they give him antibiotics, even though he tells them he just came in from Liberia. He has the early onset symptoms of Ebola. So now we're learning that his nephew had to directly call the CDC to warn that he was a potential Ebola victim until he could actually be isolated and get proper treatment. I mean, who knows? They gave him antibiotics the first time. Would they have sent him away again into the general population if this nephew hadn't have called the CDC? So, I mean, yesterday it was apparent that they completely dropped the ball. I mean, the screw-up gets even worse. Now we have the denials. NIH director on Ebola screw-up. I think we just need to put that behind us. He told MSNBC's Morning Joe earlier today. So again, move along, nothing to see here as potential new cases are being reported. Let's go to some of your calls on Ebola. Gabrielle in Michigan, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Paul. Speaking of nothing to see here, I wanted to put up a statement that they're saying that you don't show symptoms until later, and they're screening people for fevers at the airport, and you're not going to have any symptoms if you have it, later come into the States, and then have a full-blown episode.
Well, precisely. I mean, there was an article out of Defense One yesterday which made the point that screening people at airports is completely useless because they cannot show these symptoms for days. We're told that Ebola can only be contracted when the symptoms start to be shown by the sufferer, but they can go days without showing any of these symptoms. There you see the article out of Defense One. There's really no way to screen for Ebola at airports, which is the only measure that they are now apparently putting in place. As of yesterday, Customs, Border Patrol and flight attendants are being told to watch for people with signs of fever, with signs of symptoms potentially linked with Ebola. Why that wasn't already in place, I don't know. But even now it is in place, it's really going to have little effect whatsoever. No flights have been cancelled as a result of this. It doesn't appear as if that's likely to be the case, even though several other major airlines across the world cancelled flights from Liberia weeks ago. Of course, that's more difficult to do in the case of the US because those flights aren't coming in directly from Liberia or from Sierra Leone. But there's been no indication whatsoever that the government, that the health authorities are planning to do that. So, again, this screening of temperature at airports is pretty much pointless because they could have Ebola and not show the symptoms for days. Thanks for your call. Martinez in Texas, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm kind of dovetailing this in Ebola with secession. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I was an advocate of secession, but it's always split in a political, fashion. Never have we had the chance and the view of our own federal government blatantly not caring for our safety and essentially sending us off in a war while there's an outbreak going on, telling us that we're okay, and of course it's not happening. It's time for really for us to start taking responsibility for our own states and our own homes and communities, because the federal government truly isn't going to be there. So really, my question is should we use this as our motive to really say this has nothing to do with politics? This has the pure, honest view of safety, and this is why we as states and we as Texas should break away, bring our own troops back, secure our own borders, protect ourselves, because the federal government isn't doing it.
Well, precisely. I mean, even in this one case alone, the CDC, after months of telling us they were prepared for a potential Ebola outbreak in the United States, they failed completely. More so the health authorities in Texas at the Presbyterian Hospital. But again, the CDC is now complaining that it's underfunded, that it doesn't have the capacity to deal with any of this. That's only come out now after Ebola has already arrived in the United States. That probably should have been a big issue 2 months ago, but it wasn't. So again, it's a good argument for secession in terms of localizing health authorities and dealing with this on a more decentralized basis, which would probably be more effective rather than this federal response, which again always seems to be botched, always seems to be in the pursuit of monetary or political power objectives in terms of this medical martial law infrastructure that the CDC has set up, particularly over the past 10 to 15 years. So that's a good argument for devolving power locally. Thanks for the call. We're going to go to Tion in Arizona. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to bring up the point. First of all, thanks for taking my call. But I wanted to bring up the point of the black coffins, Aaron Dyke's article in 2010 about the FEMA black coffins. I mean, I just wonder, how soon are they going to be filling us Americans up in those coffins? And it just scares me.
As I said yesterday, I think the threat of the hysteria is going to be more visceral and potentially, exploited by the feds as the threat of the virus itself, because it only takes, perhaps a dozen cases across America in different states for this to really get hyped up. Of course, they've had 3,300 cases in West Africa. They're talking about 1.2 million by the end of January. Imagine if there were just a dozen or 2 dozen cases in America in different states. I mean, this would engender some kind of panic, and I know the CDC is well aware of that. So, as I said, it's about managing the hysteria as much as it is about managing the actual virus. Obviously, if it goes airborne, which a lot of major health professionals, the UN head of the Ebola response team is now warning about, then that's another nightmare scenario, as he called it altogether. But we also had the article a couple of days ago now, which was that the CDC advised funeral homes in the United States to prepare for an Ebola outbreak. They were telling funeral workers not to conduct autopsies or embalm corpses. They were giving them a list of recommendations. You see the article up on Infowars.com. So they're well aware that this could really escalate. That's obviously why they're talking to funeral homes. Hopefully it remains isolated. I think the good news is the fact that those ambulance workers that brought the Ebola victim into the hospital in Dallas were not infected with the virus. So that suggests that it's not airborne, at least in this case, and I hope that remains so. But thanks for the call. We're going to go to Tom in Idaho. Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, Paul. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Hey, have you guys heard of this fire chat yet going on in Hong Kong?
No, what's that? Go ahead and explain that to the listeners.
Man, they have got a free